We are talking about ADHD today and everything else in the world that's happening on the other side. Hey, welcome back to another episode of South Star Classroom. I am Charles, that's David, and that's Omar. You know what? We have a very special episode, and I'm gonna just pass it to our lead guy, man, because I'm gonna let him do the whole because I don't know if we're doing check-ins or not. Shout out to Jubilee.
Loves her.
Yeah, shout out Jubilee. Good afternoon, everybody. And just a reminder for everyone, we're no longer streaming directly on Twitter because I refuse to give, or X.
I'm on Twitter. I am.
Okay. I just don't want to give that man I don't want to give that man my money anymore.
We got oranges and shit.
I'm on it, but we can't stream anymore because it's no longer a whatever certified member. That's fine.
Go. I have a membership, so go share mine. And
good. Okay, I will. Yeah. I will do that right now. Yes. What happened to my screen?
I have a company to run. I will pay Elon the money. It's fine.
Good. But yeah, we are here, and we are going to talk today about ADHD. Talk a little bit about like what it is. I'm not a trained medical professional or psychologist or practitioner, but I have worked in schools for many years, and I've seen it. It's kind of it's around all of us, believe it or not. So I'm sure we'll get into some stories. But I think it's a really important topic that we bring up in a way that's respectful. That we're going to talk about what it is, and more importantly, we're going to talk about what can be done about it. Because there's lots of solutions. And so we'll get into that. But before we do that, let's do that. Let's check in. It's the eve of the debate. I don't know if any of you have plans to watch the debate. My family's doing a big Zoom. And so I'll probably be popping in there like a watch party. But outside of that, how are y'all doing?
I'll throw it to our brother first, Omar. Get us fixed.
Man, styling and profiling is how I am, man. Working my behind off. We're now in September, man. So we got to get down to the core of academic work. It's nuts out there in the education world, yo. Like, kids are extremely behind. Kids don't want to be coming to school. We got to be changing that. And then Texas, dude, changing face of education. We're going to have vouchers probably passed in the next year, probably during the legislative session that starts this January. Yeah, Texas, just fun fact for everybody on the call, is still only allowed, their legislature is only allowed to meet every other year, as per old Confederate laws of trying to regulate the kind of mad shit that Texas was doing post-Civil War. And that is still in effect today, that they can only meet every other year. So this year, the legislature's meeting up. So we're all gearing up for that, which is kind of interesting, kind of boring, because every time the legislature meets, Governor Abbott's trying to shoot something up to get himself into the presidency. So we're ready, man, but things are all right. What's up with you, David? How are you doing, Doc? One at a time, though.
Yeah, I'm good, man. It's been a busy day. I talked to David earlier. I had to sneak in a 30-minute nap, man. I've been exhausted, but I need some more. Getting ready for the debate tonight. I'll be making an appearance. Freedom Coalition of Charter Schools will be having a live stream, and then there'll be a panel, and I'm one of the panelists that'll be answering some questions about it. So it's been a long day. Yeah, man, but ultimately blessed, and got a lot of work, a lot of things happening, and progress is being made. It's just kind of like an out of body experience. Like, okay, am I hitting everything? I'm kind of been a zombie the last few days, but I'm really energized about this conversation. I think this might be one of those intimate episodes that we have. So I think this is a good topic. David, this is your topic.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll hand it off to Omar then. No. Are you ready?
I was looking at I was trying to fix something on the thing, and that's why I said his name. I'm trying to fix the screen.
I had this realization today, probably about 2 hours ago. I took a middle of the day kind of my lunch break. I went to our local YMCA, and we signed up there a couple months ago. They've got 2 nice, beautiful, swimming pools for lap swimming, and I've gotten back into swimming, and it's been great for my health and for just everything.
Good for your joints.
It's beautiful. Oh, it's just great, man. It's like I started at like X number of yards, and I'm up to like, in any given day. I think today I swam like 600 yards, which is good. It's zero impact, so it's good on your joints. Full body workout,
600
cardio,
yards?
breathing.
Yeah,
yeah, man. And so that feels good. But I had this realization that when I was in the pool, my son's school is about a mile from the YMCA, and he has PE at the same time, and they're doing a whole month of swimming. So I'm like, we're both in swimming pools and within a close proximity to one another. It's been really hot here. We're finally going to have a cool day, but the last like 4 days, no joke, they've been up over 100 here. So it's been like, I know for Omar it's nothing, but
I think Arizona's had 100 straight days of 100 degrees or more.
I don't know how you do
LA
that.
is on fire. Chicago finally cooled down. We had a cool day the last 2 or 3 days, but it's supposed to heat back up.
Crazy, man. It starts to wear on people. People start walking around. They look like lizards, and people just like it does something to your body, man, and to your brain. It's not good. But anyways, exercise. We'll get to the exercise part in a bit here, but I wanted to bring up this topic today. Again, I've been listening to a lot of some podcasts on the subject, and I've done a little bit of research. We're not going to get super deep into the physiology or the mechanics of ADHD and what's happening in the brain, although I think that's very interesting. We'll get into it a little bit because then it does help us to understand, what some possible, solutions are outside of medication. But so we're talking about ADHD in the United States of America. We've got about 6 million children that have been officially diagnosed, right? That's bigger than I thought it was going to be. So we're looking at about 9% of children in that age group from 2 to 17. 10%. That's like 1 out of 10 kids, right? And some of those are probably misdiagnosed, and some of and then there's a lot of undiagnosed ADHD out there, right? So it's not an exact number, but you can start to get the sense that it's big, and these young people are in our schools, and so that's kind of what we're going to talk about today.
Oh Jesus!
The official. What did he say?
Bill.
I think his ADHD is kicking in right now.
Mine did. I usually post our stuff with no comment. It's like I don't know where he's just Bill. Those that are just listening, Bill is one of our best guests, and he gives really good comments, and he was reflecting on his own upbringing with swimming at a Catholic school, and
wow.
It's
okay,
weird.
next, we're gonna do a.
Are we gonna do the Catholic
school education next week? That's your show.
High school girls in trouble.
Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So that's the technical name for it. Calling it a disorder is what it is. It's very interesting because you think of ADHD, you think of things like inattention, right? Can't stay focused for a prolonged period of time. Hyperactivity is associated with it. Impulsivity, right? And then, I mean, those are a couple of the big kind of like things that manifest themselves into behaviors. And the reason why I say like disorder may not be the correct, at least for me, it seems like may not be the correct term, because if you look at the way that schools are set up, right? Schools, traditional schooling, is where you're going to ask children, even young children, even as young as like kindergarten, to sit, stay focused for a long period of time without movement, and to keep their hands to themselves, right? It's like not a good match. It's a mismatch. And then on top of that, if you do have a young person with ADHD, it's even worse, right? You can see where this is going. So let me just go over a couple of the basics for what it looks like. I'm going to put it into 3 buckets. I'll give a quick description, and then we'll open it up for the first round of conversation before we go into the other sections. So number 1 is inattention, right? Inattention. Difficulty sustaining attention, following through on tasks, right? So you might start something and not finish it, right? Organizing things, managing your time, right? You can see this is like stuff that just impacts not just in school, but like in life too.
Yeah.
People might seem forgetful, easily distracted, prone to making careless mistakes, right? So that's 1 bucket. Let me see here really quick.
Guilty as charged.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no problem. And then number 2, hyperactivity, excessive fidgeting, restlessness, or the inability to sit still. Often noticeable in structured environments like a classroom, a meeting, even like a Zoom meeting, right? Where you have to like sit there and be like, yeah, a podcast that lasts an hour, right? And then number 3 is impulsivity, acting without thinking, interrupting others, difficulty waiting for a turn. You could see how that would manifest itself in an elementary school or a middle school or even a high school, right? And so those are the 3 kind of categories that some of the character, I won't even call them symptoms, I'm going to say characteristics fall into. So and some of it, it's like anything else. There's like a more mild version of it, and then there are much more extreme versions of it, right? So that's kind of the baseline. I would like to hear from both of you. Like, does that make sense? Is that kind of what you have thought about when you think about ADHD, et cetera, et cetera? Anything that you've seen in schools that you're working in? I know Omar, a lot of the kids at your school, Charles, you've been in and around it. You've been in schools too. So what's your initial takeaway on that?
Well, I want to yield to the school leaders first, whether y'all want to go or have me go, but I feel like you both have ran schools, so let me humbly, yield that floor to you all.
Yeah, I mean, I think our audience is empathizing with us right now, asking themselves, do I have this? It's like, I think you were going through those 3, and if you could repeat those 3 really quick, David, because that was pretty badass.
The 3 categories are inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity.
Inattention,
hyperactivity,
like fidgeting,
and
can't stay still.
Yeah.
Impulsivity. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of us are sitting here wondering to ourselves, like, how much of this do we have? And I could tell you that, like, the younger the kid, like, it's hard to sit here and say that this kindergartner or this second grade has all these things when they're just being a kid. And, even before the show, I got to tell you that, like, school's been school. And I think it's very easy for us to be like, well, in my generation, kids sat down and like, no, they didn't. Like, man, look, I think the phone has made it significantly worse. And I think our attention spans have actually dwindled a lot with the phone and with the iPad. But being a kid, and people are like, well, in the 1950s, yeah, man, in the 1950s, they weren't paying attention. They weren't. learning all the shit that they were lecturing about. They were passing notes and talking about what was happening with Rizzo and Kanicki and the rest of the gang. So I think in one end, to sit in a classroom and hear a lecture, it has been scientifically proven over and over and over again that you have the bell curve, the reverse bell curve, right? And you all know this, is that like the first 10 to 15 minutes, there's an immense amount of like kind of comprehension, right? And then it dips precipitously in the middle. And those like middle 30 to 45 minutes are just lost. And then it picks back up again at the end for the last like 10, 15 minutes. And this is why video games pump into their algorithm tons of like dopamine shots. So I hear from parents a lot, well, my kid can focus on this video game, but they can't focus on reading. And like, these are radically different things. And like, we're competing against the video game industry. Like, they are pumping your kid full of dopamine on purpose, much like an addict at a casino is consistently gambling with the serotonin and the dopamine. So to get into the nitty gritty, like, I've had these conversations a lot with parents, and it's been both spectrums. Should I give my kid all of the Adderall, or I don't want to give my kid anything and they have zero issues? And I think there lies this really cool middle ground where I am in no way, shape, or form immediate on any kind of prescription drug. Dude, I think 80 times over just taking aspirin myself. So I'm very medication adverse. I never want to rule it out if there's a massive kind of imbalance, but I think for a lot of parents, just to contradict that your child needs some level of like, you know, systems or structures or ways to figure this out. Like, as a teacher, I remember a very special case with a young Black boy in my 7th grade class, and I loved this kid, still do actually. And every teacher is like, we can't control him. He's up, he's moving. And I'm like,
he's up, he's moving.
Like the fucking blob, bro. Like, he gonna eat you and shit. And they're like, hey, I can't control him. In my class, I was like, this kid ain't lighting fireworks like it's the scene from Boogie Nights. He just needs to move. But I guarantee you he's listening. Man. So I would set little timers and be like, yo, man, get up and walk around. Do your thing. Yep. Listen in. Let me ask you some questions. Let me get you writing down. That kid was getting straight A's in my classroom because there are ways around this whole ADHD thing where I think that where is the teacher being adaptive to the students versus the students having to completely adapt to the teacher? There's got to be a two-way street there. You know what I'm saying? And I know it was all over the place, but I'll focus in on my next couple comments. I just kind of wanted to shoot out a bunch of darts into the air about how teachers handle it, how students handle it, how parents handle it. I think parents being either very histrionic about it or not even remotely concerned about it. So just wanted to shoot those darts in the air to kind of see what sticks with our audience and with you all. Morphine. Bill, dude, are we still stuck on the Civil War, man? That was America's first drug of choice, baby. Well, that
I think he's watching a different podcast, listening to a different podcast, but chatting in ours.
Yeah. Fun fact, George Washington.
He's talking about the drugs. It was around the time when Omar was talking about his reluctance to take any type of drugs. Yeah, man. Say, Charles? I won't even. Y'all got the stupid part handled. I'll leave that to you all. I'll just say it for myself. I think, you know, I've never been officially diagnosed with those things. Partially, maybe because I went to so many schools and I made decent grades. Right, like you gotta understand the type of schools I went to. The squeaky wheel is what gets that type of attention. But you know, if I'm being very honest, and I'll with you all, I'll do this with this show. I don't just suffer from those things. Like it's a hyper suffering from those things. Like like when you talk about inattention, like I have to be very, very precise with my time, and I have to have personal markers that help me kind of stay on there and reward systems and things like that. You know, even running this podcast, like it's good that I have to, like, you know, do the comments or things like that. I have to be doing something. I can't just necessarily sit there, but it's always been like that. And I think at this point in my big age, right, I'm in my 40s now, early 40s. That's weird to say, but like, you know what I'm saying? It's like, look, now my ego's involved. Now I'm like, look, if I do have these things, like, I'm just trying to figure it out. But ADHD, I started my career working with kids with special needs on the spectrum. So like, also have like a lot of tendencies, and we got this from like our clinician and stuff that was like watching how I even worked and why I worked so well with that group. Like, you might be on the spectrum, you might be there, and just, I mean, I always have 30 different tasks going. I just have to do it. And it's not, let me explain the inattentiveness, because I think sometimes people just think it's a discipline thing. It's not that I don't want to pay attention to certain things. It's like a channel changes, or like something else catches my attention, and I can't change my attention back. So for instance, if I'm writing this report that we're working on, David, and I say I'm gonna write from 2 to 4, and then something else is happening, like something's on my floor, my brain will not release me from like focusing on that. So I have to kind of work it. That's why you got a text message from me on a Sunday this week, you know, like, hey, I finally got this stuff done, because I gotta, when I got that energy, I gotta kind of write and kind of do it. But I mean, let's look at it like, you know, I went to 11 different schools. My parents was in and out of jail, like, and I had like really close friends, like murdered, like not just like they died in very violent ways. And then there was just like this detachment. And oh yeah, you know, I went through NA with my parents when they were getting clean. So I was 10 years old going to these NA meetings. And then I just would hear these people describe these things. Like, I'm hyper impulsive. So I try to, like, I wanted to go to military school because I need a super structured environment. That's why I loved being on a basketball team. Like, I hated the things you had to do, but being a part of a regimented team, like, kind of works for me. So I think for me, you know, when we had these conversations, I think now, you know, and I got the resources, I can go and get diagnosed and stuff, but I think, and maybe I should, but you know, when we talk about these things, I feel like I see them so rampant and so often. Yeah, man, it sucks because I see kids that don't have those things get overdiagnosed, and kids that actually do have these things, or not just people, adults. Like, I've worked with these, I am one of these people, I work with these people, never got that attention that they needed on that, and are just trying to kind of make their best and make their way with it. So I think it's an interesting conversation. That's why I was like, oh, this is going to be an interesting topic. And how honest do I want to be in this conversation? Like, I'll give you an example. Like, keep going. I'll show you how I have to write, how I have to do work. I use this thing every day, and this cube is a Pomodoro cube. And so when I have to write or do something, I'll tell myself, well, I'm gonna give it 15 minutes. I'll sit it up, can't do anything, kind of have my phone away from me. And then after it, I will, you know, give myself a break or something like that. But I use this thing every single day, like, to kind of try to keep me on track. So I even travel.
Just a quick question, man, or the audience. To Nicole specifically, what are the resources? The resources for the Pomodoro Cube, or the resources for?
I think in general
that Bill Conrad is trying to peddle right now.
I think in general,
to isolate which one we're talking about. That cube is badass, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, blocking out your calendar and then timing yourself is a strategy we use in the classroom, and that I use on my own. So I'm with you.
That's right.
I'm with you on that one.
So I dropped a link in there, just one of the resources that we use to put together information for the show. And then when we get to the second part, I'll drop another link. We start getting more focused on like subgroups. Let's see. Yeah, I think, you know, it's been interesting. So we have we have an ADHD diagnosis in our family. And I think it probably goes beyond that. I think of like my career trajectory, right? Where I was a teacher and a school leader for, you know, whatever, like 20 years, right? And I think the teaching part and more importantly, the school leader part, like, I look back on my years as a school leader, and some of the things that we did and the monumental, like the mountains that we climbed, and we were always victorious for kids, and just the amount of work that it took to get those things done. And I was like focused for a 12-hour workday the whole time through. Would come home, have a beer, go to sleep, go back and do it all again for decades, right? And then with the shift to like not work from home as a result of COVID, but I did have some other, roles that I filled where it was kind of a hybrid, where I was working out of a home office, right? I didn't have all that energy around me, students, staff, of community. And I became very disorganized in my professional work, time management just like was terrible. And I've learned to do things differently. So, I'm still working on it. It's a work in progress. And so, I kind of look back and be like, well, possibly, who knows? But like I said, we definitely have it in the family. We're working through it. And what I've also learned is like when I was training to become a teacher, like we got zero support or guidance or resource in terms of, it was all about like race theory and, this and that, and like social justice and the revolution and, the brown berets and the Black Panthers, all important. Nothing about ADHD and how to support. I mean, it could have been like a 2-day class and it would have been good, but we didn't get any of that. So in my first part of my career as a teacher and even as a school leader, like I just didn't have the tools to say like, we should be doing these things for our kids in the classroom. It wasn't until I got to Urban Montessori working with, our youngest kids were 4.5 years old, little babies, man. And up to 8th grade. And so, that's where I kind of did my deep dive and had to learn, I'm not going to get into like the threshold between general education and special education, because students have ADHD that are general education students and special education students. What I will say is there are some basic strategies that teachers and schools can implement even in your home, right? It's a lot of this stuff like breaks down to like doing it in the home too. If your children have ADHD, here's some very basic ones, right? Having a structured environment, not in terms of like time, but in terms of like routines. Do I know what to expect when I go to school? Is there an expected routine? Same at home, right? You got to have like chore time.
Man, I
got to have homework time.
Enough about this.
And that in school is incredibly important. It's even important for, if you're a leader leading adults in a school environment, having structure for them just around their expectations and meetings and XYZ. Number 2 is movement breaks. Omar, you alluded to that earlier. We would have, what did we call them? Body breaks at Urban Montessori. Sometimes it was the whole class. Sometimes the kid could take a pass and go on a body break. We knew the kid, there's Charles, he's on the yard, he's walking around. We know that he's there, right? He gets to get that energy out, or doing wall push-ups or whatever it was, right? It was expected. Clear instructions, not overwhelming, not ambiguous, but very clear, just clear, right? Yep. Direct language, step-by-step instructions. Also for the home. I got 3 more. Visual aids. So charts, schedules, different kinds of prompts for students that may have a hard time reading a lot of text. Positive reinforcement, right? We're always going to get, when something goes wrong or the expectation is not met, we're always going to get called out for what we should have done better, but also making sure that we are acknowledging positive steps and positive activities in the classroom. Even going back to like that general ed idea of the first 3 weeks of school, teachers should be reaching out to every home saying like, hey, you know what? Just want to let you know I'm Omar's teacher. You know, he's been great so far. I'm Charles' teacher. He's been great so far. And then relationships, right? Building relationships of trust, building rapport with your kids. I mean, those are like focused strategies for students with ADHD, but you can see they work for all young people, all students.
Yeah, man. I think it's like, you know, and the way I've thought about it and kind of not have fun with it, but it's like, if I'm battling my brain today, who's gonna win? Like, am I gonna be in control of my brain, or is my brain gonna be in control of me? Now I know that it's paradoxical in what I'm saying, but you get the gist. I know, you know, on the internet, somebody be like, well, your brain is always shut up. You know what I mean? Like, so am I able to sustain this and get this thing done, or be able to focus and lock in things like that? You know, but I, like you said, I think a lot of these things are just with good coping mechanisms in place, and not, you know, I think this is where classroom management is really important. Is your classroom a chaotic environment? Because chaos, when you add that on top of these things, like I don't know if it's a chicken or the egg thing, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? But I was in at such a young age, I was in so many brand new environments that it's like, you know, I think the brain finds ways to protect itself. I think it finds ways to kind of protect you. I also think, you know, we didn't mention this, but I think everybody would agree, you know, food and things have changed. Like, there's different hormones, there's what we're eating. Like, there's no general nutrition that people are like getting. Everything has sugar. And I remember when I was younger and somebody was saying how much sugar ketchup had in it. Like, it's just sugar. It's sugar paste. And sugar tends to be the base for a lot of things wrong with people. Like, I think, you know, sugar in the blood is diabetes. There was this post, I'll see if I can find it. You know, sugar in the brain is dementia. Like, sugar in all these things are sugars getting in, you know, and I think sugar and a lack of nutrition and water and work, I think all those things play into it. I really do. Not to sound like I'm not a health nut, I got to lose my own weight, but I do think that, you know, those things matter. I'll see if I can find that.
There's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of new. It's not even really new research, but it's a different way of thinking about ADHD, because ADHD has to do with like the brain and metabolism, right? Dopamine, right?
And what fights metabolism? Sugar. Like, what is at war with metabolism all the time?
Exactly.
Right?
So you know, a lot of the new, I wouldn't say new, but you know, it's we're kind of doing that pendulum swing again, is saying like three things are worth trying, right? Nutrition, exercise, and sleep. Those three things, right? You know, maybe in addition to medication, if that's kind of part of your plan. But, you know, medication in many cases is not going to do it unless those other things are kind of in place. And again, those are things that are good for like everybody, right?
Man, I got a lot to say on this, man. And it's going to be more conversational today, but damn. So let me just get started on a couple weird tangents. One, sugar. So like sugar, dude, number one cause of cancer. So sugar is the embodiment of cancer. So for all y'all listening, man, like, get the hell off of sugar as much as you can, because that's what cancer cells feed on. How do I know that? Quick fun story about your co-host Omar Yanar, if I can speak in the third person, all Iron Man style. Dude, I had a cancer cyst in my throat when I was growing up. So if I don't even think about my voice, this is the tone of my voice. I can raise it because, you know, excitement, but if there's no raise, this is the way it is. Why? Cancer cyst in the throat. What happened? Mom took me to doctors. They were like, we're going to cut your son's throat wide open. We're going to extract all this stuff out. And by the way, there is a follow-up to this story with ADHD. I'm going somewhere. And she was like, this is bullshit. There's got to be another way. Took me, my mom's a little histrionic. She's like, we're taking you to a Mexican curandero, which is like a Mexican witch doctor. And I'm like, all right. I'm like 6 years old. I'm like, cool. We're going to a shaman. Man, this dude was just a naturalist. He wasn't home. He wasn't like boiling me in sage and shit. He took one look at me, one looked at the thing, and was like, "Yep, here's what's going on." First thing he cut out of my diet: sugar, then white flour, processed foods.
Yeah.
Okay, so
that's right.
Those three things he completely cut out. So like I didn't have sugar growing up. Imagine, dude, it's the 1980s. Ain't no Lucky Charms for me. Ain't any of those cocaine riddled Frosted Flakes with that cocaine-filled tigers. Like, you're great. And I was like, I know why you're great, man. You need to calm down. You and Bill need to take it easy on them drugs and shit. But what happened was the cancerous cyst after several years with no sugar in these like special teas completely went away. I was going to lose my voice at age 16. B, what did it do for my health? I was the number one tennis player in the Southwest when I was in the 12s division. And, my coach is incredibly cool. And he was like, Omar, like, you are exceptionally talented. I was like, no, I outlasted everybody else because my diet was so good. What did it do for my ADHD? An immense amount. I have it. I clearly have it. And a lot of entrepreneurs have it. And our ability to control it has led to successful entrepreneurship. But much like Doc, I have figured out structures, but it's the nutrition, it's the sleep, and it's the water and the exercise that get me completely leveled. When I don't have one of those, and what I'm getting at is this is why I have such a problem with ADHD, and let's just throw a pill at it, because fucking America, dude, loves to throw pills at shit. Like, oh, you got this problem, let's throw this pill at it. And it's like, we're all just like, dude, I think that there's going to be one day when we do enough neurological studies to figure out what is the vitamin that you need to kind of balance your dopamine, your serotonin, your oxytocin, and all that good shit, so that we're like a bit level. But like Savannah said it really well herself, dude. Like, she was heavily medicated when she was a child. She was walking around like a zombie. And I got to tell you that, like, since she's been off that medication, she's figured out a number of ways of getting highly focused and even keeled without a shred of medication. And I think that in this country, we look at a problem like ADHD, if it is a problem in and of itself, and want to prescribe a medicine, and much like Nicole said, put a bunch of labels on it without thinking of like what are the holistic ways of actually solving it. I got a lot more, but I talked a whole lot, so I'm going to chill the hell out.
Like your brain, it's and that's why I was kind of pushing back against this concept of it being. And I appreciate the fact that we're kind of opening up here. It's like three men of color, like not the conversation that it needs to be happening more in our communities, right? It's kind of like, possibly some like shame around it, or so many other things, but it's a real thing. And it's like, as opposed to thinking of as a disorder, it's like my brain just works differently, right? So how can I set my world up to function and be more productive or whatever? What are the things that I can do differently? And like you said, Omar, you're right. I don't know what the data says, but there's anecdotal evidence and data that says that a lot of our overachievers and founders and leaders and people that, are just, have kind of gone on to do, big and amazing things, ADHD, right?
Yeah, dude.
Able to focus, go in and just like, attack something 1,000%, right? Invent something. Create something, right?
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's crazy.
And I want to say this, like, just to go ahead. I was just going to say, quick add, something I want to rectify is if you set up a school in the structures that David talked about, I really, really I gravitated towards that. And I know we're trying to transition really quick, but man, if you listen to what you said, this is how EPLA was set up, right? Like consistency. Every single day, a kid in 6th grade would walk in and it was the exact same routine every single day. And not like, oh, I got this class and I got this class. It was like, nope. In this class, you're saying hello to the teacher with a high five. At this class, it's a chicken wing. It's the small details. But then imagine every 6th grader with the exact same set of rules. So the expectations for the child and the rules for the child are identical in every class, because that is part of the ADHD problem. You're saying, man, these middle school kids can't focus. And I'm like, how the fuck are they supposed to focus when they've got 7 different teachers, 7 different sets of rules, 7 different sets of guidelines? Like, that's confusing as hell. So I'm just saying, man, like, it's really cool that you said that the practices that we use as ADHD are excellent practices for kids and adults to learn structure and consistency, because I've based my adult life on some of those practices, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man.
I like what Nicholas got to say right here, man.
Oh, go ahead, read it. You can read it.
No, go ahead, Doc.
I found that post. Let me read it. It says, it'll be quick, David. Refined sugar on your skin is called aging. Refined sugar in your teeth is called cavities. Refined sugar in your eyes is called glaucoma. Refined sugar in your sleep is called insomnia. Refined sugar in your blood is called diabetes. Refined sugar in a baby's brain is called ADHD. Excess refined sugar in your system is called cancer. Refined sugar in adult brains is called dementia and Alzheimer's. Refined sugar on Wall Street is $1 billion industry. Addiction to refined sugar is 8 times more powerful than cocaine. So just, I mean, but
damn, right back. We talked a lot about cocaine today. Woo.
I mean, I guess I'm just saying,
and morphine.
We talk about morphine,
powder,
not cocaine,
powder.
but I do think, I mean, again, I think you brought up some really good points, David, just around us talking about it. And again, it's not necessarily a shame thing. I think for me at this point, it's just like, you know what I've done? I've come this far, you know, with these things. There's an ego piece of it where I want to beat this thing. I don't want, you know, I don't want to be like, well, these are the reasons or whatever the case is. The man in me is like, fuck that. I can beat this. I can get through this and try to figure it out. But I do think that also can be a weakness for us. And we talk about men of color, like, I'm Black. Diabetes is a huge, huge thing that runs rampant here. And I know brown people get diabetes too. So, you know, it's like, I mean, you know, I think when you start to break down who these things are impacting and how, and then I think the diabolical part is so many things are just filled with sugar or just not good for us that you just don't know. I didn't know that regular wheat bread, we only could eat wheat bread in my house, but all that shit is just sugar. I didn't know how much sugar went in the bread. I didn't know all those things. So, and now that you know better, it's like, well, damn, I'm trying to do better. But I do think, while I'll give that post credit, if you telling me that this shit is 8 times more addictive than cocaine, I've never done cocaine, but I've seen crackheads before. If it's more addictive than that, you know, how do you start to change that? But also, why is our country not taking steps, you know what I'm saying, to change that? Because when I went to Paris, when I go to Europe and I eat bread there or food there, it's very different. I went to Brazil, my orange juice was actually oranges. Like, it's like, oh, this orange juice tastes bitter. It's not very sweet. They was like, because you drinking actual orange juice.
It's the whole system of the way our food distribution system works. Like we need food. We need food that you can store for like months and years at a time, right? Processed foods, as opposed to having a more like farm to table system. But yeah, that's a whole other show on capitalism. But you were onto something here. So I think, you know, when we talk about, you know, we're throwing these things out there like sleep, like nutrition, like exercise. But what if you live in deep East Oakland or like South Central LA or, you know, some part of like Harlem or wherever, where maybe you don't have like the easy and safe access to do things like exercise, or maybe you live in like a food desert where, like, you know, they're just, you got, you know, people are buying food from liquor stores or whatever, you know. I mean, I know that's a reality in 2024. So the solutions for some people are a bit more straightforward. You know, we can obviously make the changes in our own homes, but the environment definitely like impacts that. And so this last closing piece, I want to call this out. So why is this important? So there's an issue with boys, right? boys are 2 to 3 more times likely to get diagnosed with ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that says that boys actually have ADHD at a higher rate than girls. I think we're seeing other things and misdiagnosing at a higher rate. And then this other piece, which I'm going to drop into the chat here, which I thought was very interesting, from Word in Black. It's a recent piece. I think Sharif was quoted in here. I don't think he wrote it, but he was quoted. We're also seeing an increase in diagnosis amongst Black and you could say brown boys too, right? And then what does that look like in schools, right? It looks like an increase in punitive measures as early as like kindergarten and first grade and second grade. Like Omar can't sit still. Charles can't sit still. And so what we're seeing is a disproportionate impact for students, Black and brown students, talking about boys, around discipline that happens in schools, because schools are not equipped to deal with students that either have ADHD or are, showing some characteristics of what people might think is ADHD. And so that's when we start to see the disproportionate discipline that we know kind of goes all the way through up until 12th grade, if we're lucky, but also leads to things like kids dropping out of school, right? And so many other things. They're losing interest. You become disenfranchised because I'm going to school with my brain that I've always had, and school is rejecting me, and nobody's helping me, right? And so, sure, I'm going to start to disenfranchise. I'm going to hate school, right? I'm going to hate the whole thing about school, right? And that's just another piece of it. I think that connects well outside of the broad topic of ADHD is the disproportionate impact for Black and brown students and boys, in particular.
Mm-hmm.
Well, man, like it all, right? Like all these things like seemingly connect, and I don't want to get like super conspiracy here, but like in what was just said, I'm with Chris Rock, and I'm always with Chris Rock, and he's like, yo, man, like the money is in the treatment, not in the cure.
Right.
So like, of course, of course, like we have, first off, I don't want to like start getting bonkers and tinfoil hat, but it's not that tinfoil hat. We have an overproduction of corn in this country. So follow me for a second. Ludicrous overproduction of corn, subsidizing to have corn through the ass. And it's like, let's use corn for gasoline. Let's use corn for food. But like corn, is oftentimes used for two main purposes: feeding animals. That's why our food is chock filled with issues, right? And our meats are like filled with issues. B, sugar. We ain't using real sugar. We're using that corn syrup shit. And that's what your ketchup is filled with. That's what your bread is filled with. Doc is right. I was listening to some podcast, and fascinatingly enough, in Ireland, they have now labeled Subway bread, any bread, including the wheat bread, not as bread, as a confectionery. It is labeled the confectionery because the sugar is so effing high in the bread and Subway sandwiches that it can't be legally considered bread in Ireland. It's considered a confectionery, which is like a croissant, like sugar, like a pastry. That's what it's considered. And the same shit's going on in the United States, where we're just getting pumped full with it. So follow the overproduction of corn to the needing to use it, thus the ludicrous amounts of sugar in everything that we have here in the United States. Link that sugar into exactly what Doc was saying: the glaucoma issues, the Alzheimer's issues, the insomnia issues, the cancer issues. And guess what, man? The medical industry is blowing up. And all that money that the medical industry is making dependent on that situation. So, Chris Rock is fucking right, man. Like there's money in the treatment and not so much money in the cure. And Nicole's right. We have to educate ourselves immensely, because a lot of these issues that we really think about with our children, with ourselves, are oftentimes linked to those three things that David was talking about: nutrition, exercise, and sleep. And that's insane to me. And the thing is that, like, yo, wealthier adults know this stuff. Who's really suffering is our low-income kids, man, and our low-income people, because what choices do they often have? They oftentimes are forced to go get that fast food because they don't have time to cook, but the price point is right. They're oftentimes forced to get that fast food because it's cheaper than actually going to the grocery store. They're forced to get that fast food because they're living in a food desert. And that is what is disproportionately affecting our low-income Black and brown kids. And that's where it comes back. You got the corn, to the sugar, to the cause, to the income, and the hyper level that it affects the Black and brown community. And I got to tell you, I, for one, am not one for coincidence. I think that shit's on purpose, but I always have thought that shit's on purpose.
Look, my neighbor, the little old Black lady that I love, that is right next door to me. She has had a cookout, and most of the stuff that she used, right, like to season and do all that stuff, is all stuff she grows. She grows everything, and you know, and I somewhere along the line it shifted, right? I remember when I was a kid, you know, McDonald's was like a special thing, like, you know, Eddie Murphy
like a treat.
had that joke. Yeah, Eddie Murphy had that joke, right?
Yeah,
right?
We got
I don't know if you've seen it, David, but the joke, I don't want to mess up his joke, but it's basically he wanted a McDonald's hamburger, and his mom's like, boy, I make a hamburger better than McDonald's, and bell peppers and all kind of stuff. And he said, and anyway, he was like, I don't want this, right? But then as he got older as an adult, he had got into a fight and got beat up. It's like, I want my mama to make me one of these burgers. But the point is, you know, I had a Subway sandwich the other day. Like I usually will get like I try to get like a veggie sandwich, and I might add, like, I used to add bacon. I'm trying to do turkey, and I'll add turkey to it for the protein. But it tasted so different. It just was like, I haven't had Subway in so long, but I'm like, this don't taste like a fresh sandwich. You know what I'm saying? And this all vegetables with a little bit of turkey. But I thought this was a great show, man. And our apologies. I'll apologize on Omar's behalf too, because I know you wanted to probably go more into schools and how schools should deal with this stuff, but it turned into a very personal episode. Maybe that's just it means it was a great topic. So I want to let you know I'm aware that we kind of veered off, man, and my apologies. But I do think it was still a really good conversation. And I think, you know, and I'm just looking at this, man, like we are all kind of addicts, man, and like not by choice. Like, you know, like even if you're trying to be healthy, even the healthy stuff has a whole bunch of stuff in there that ain't necessarily good for you. And it's just like, yo, you just feel set up to fail. And I don't know how you fix that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are definitely the bigger, the larger issues that we're talking about now, the macro issues that we're talking about now about our food systems, you know, about our safety in the community, access to, you know, safe recreational areas, right? Those are all like real things that impact people every day. And like we always said, I forget what the quote is, but like when the US or when America like sneezes, catches a cold, right? Black and brown people catch you know, the flu or whatever, or it might be worse than that. You know, ADHD is a thing, and it's not the ADHD, it's the response to ADHD that is impacting our young Black and brown children, boys more than girls, in our schools every day, right? And that's the reality of it, right? You start to throw in, you know, if you're a teacher, if you're a school leader, and you see, you know, 5 students do the same 5 things, you know, many are going to interpret those things different ways depending on the color of that child's skin, right? Which is crazy. And it happens every day in our schools. They attach all kinds of other attributes to the behavior, right? It's a child, right? It's a child. And so I think for my closing thoughts, you know, I just kind of want to pull back and say, you know, there are basic things that our schools can do. And again, these are also things that we can do in our homes, you know, to address some of these needs. I won't even say challenges, but to set up our children and our students, and in many cases, us as adults, for better success, right? And so I'm going to go back to what this list that we had, and we did put some resources in the chat for people. The importance of a structured environment, right? Making sure that there's a certain amount of predictability to daily routines. That brings anxiety down, right? Mm-hmm. School and home. Number 2, movement breaks. It's kind of a no-brainer, but it's especially for younger children, children need to move their bodies when their bodies are growing, their brains are growing, and these things are connected, and they need to get around and move to like open things up, and but asking a child to sit in a chair at a table for X number of hours a day is just it's inhumane for any child. So figuring out a system where students can actually take physical breaks outside of recess, outside of lunch, outside of PE, talking about in between. Right. Clear instructions, making sure that teachers are providing clear instructions for their students. Very clear, predictable, in the same place. You know where I'm going with this. Every day, here's the date, here's the class, here's the period, here's the subject, here's the warm-up, here's the classwork, here's the homework, right? In that structure. Again, with ADHD, sometimes a long string of text can be overwhelming. So make sure that we're incorporating visual aids. It's also good for English learners, right? Positive reinforcement. Positive reinforcement is so key. When you see something, when you see growth, when you see, a student making an effort, to do something positive or to advocate for themselves, call it out. Call it out. That matters to young people. It matters to adults too. We're probably all used to getting negative feedback only, right? I'm like, you don't notice the good things that I'm doing. You just get dinged for the bad things. And then the biggest one is, and this is universal. These are all universal. Create an environment and expectations for adults that work in the school to build an environment of trust and build rapport with students and their families. Try and create that environment, because without that, these other things are just going to be window dressing. So I will end it there and let you all finish up. But thank you for engaging in this conversation. I appreciate both of you. Yeah, and audience, thank you too, man. We had very good numbers today, by the way.
We did. They're still growing. I will say, I'll do my piece and get out the way and let Omar take us out. I think also adding, working and learning self-regulation for yourself and for young people and teaching those practices early. And it could sound silly, but like things like breathing exercises or just being aware, like, hey, I'm feeling some kind of way. Why am I feeling this way? As opposed to, just being reactionary to it, right? Like I said, I struggle with impulse control. And what'll happen is I'll do something I regret before I even realize that's what it was. And that's because I'm not listening to your body will always give you off signals. Your brain will give you signals, and you got to sharpen your ability to be able to recognize when that's happening and catch it. You know what I'm saying? And I think we try to teach self-regulation a lot. We probably don't call it that, but when you're trying to work with younger people or, like there's a reason that those things happen. And also you brought up a good point, David, about everybody not being able to, go out to a gym or whatever, or maybe the environment's not safe. Listen, when I played on a team, I had to do 100 push-ups every day and 100 sit-ups. Like you can do that. You can do that on a dirt floor. There are things you can do. There are ways that you can do these things. And also, I learned this just from being in training. You actually can lose more weight walking at a high pace than running all the time. So those steps, doing those things, it adds to it, man. You probably won't see the changes immediately, but it's about building a routine. It's about sticking to that routine. And if you fall off that routine, it's okay. Don't kill yourself. You just get back on it. Very similar to the rules of NA and AA. Breaking an addiction is hard. And it might not be drugs and alcohol per se, but the same concepts apply because it is an addiction, or training yourself how to deal with these things.
Hell yeah, man. I mean, I'll be real quick. To add to David, what he was saying, I think that some of the things that we need to be looking for in our schools that I'm really adamant about is like in the classroom, are there like transitions every 15 to 20 minutes? Like this whole like either lecturing at you the whole time or like letting you go and doing your own work for 40 minutes while the teacher's, I don't know, like taking a nap, watching Gettysburg, checking their phone and shit. Like, dude, like we ran a mock commercial about teachers like just checking out their phones during class times because they're not engaging in the kids and engaging their minds and getting them to think. Timers, having the kids talk, mental activities. These are all components that I think the classroom needs to do to really touch base on what Doc was talking about. It's really about what you can do to empower yourself. What are we doing to kind of curb our sugar? What are we doing to kind of get more exercise into our daily basis? What are we doing to be a little bit more mindful? I mean, shit, man, Nicole talked a ton about meditation, and like meditation has kind of like the beautiful thing about meditation is the veil's been lifted. This is not some like, you know, esoteric Buddhist practice that no one understands. This is, you know, contemplative breathing exercises with 1,000 apps out there and YouTube videos for free to guide you on what are we doing to help get our kids to understand the ramifications of things that they yet do not understand. Eating a McDonald's burger, eating ketchup, understanding and talking through them. Hey, man, how'd you feel today after you did this? How'd you feel today after you did this? You know, this is just a quick anecdote, but famously, oh man, and I'm blanking on his name because ADHD people blank on people's names. Star-Lord, man, my man who, Doc, you gotta help me out. Star-Lord, Parks and Rec, my man who is the head of the Guardians of the Galaxy.
The white dude, I don't know why I can't think of his name right now, but
yeah,
man, Star-Lord. Hold on,
man. I'm like, I don't know how I'm Chris Pratt. There it is.
Chris Pratt, yeah.
Okay.
Famously said when he.
I thought you were going to say R.I.P. to James Earl Jones to Darth Vader.
We will.
That too.
We will.
That too.
We will, man. I was about to close out on that shit. 93 years old, but Chris Pratt famously said, "I had to make a transition between really loving what I ate and feeling like shit to not necessarily eating shit, but like eating for the sake of nutrition, but feeling great." And like, it was a really cool way that he phrased it. It was like, I felt great while eating, but felt terrible after. And I changed that to, you know, felt not so great about what I was eating, but it was healthy, but felt really great thereafter. And I think those are kind of the mindful techniques that we can use on ourselves and with our kids and everything else. But on that note, with this particular voice, shout out to James Earl Jones, 93 years old, a brilliant actor who took speech therapy, by the way, and stuttered. And he himself taught his way out of that stuttering. So I think it's extremely apropos.
Wow.
We end on that note. Rest in peace to a master.
A master thespian. He is quintessential acting and with that gravitas. And yeah, man. But great show, great show, David. And
great show, David.
And Jubilee, we love you. I know you're probably watching. And that is for Jubilee, for Omar, for David. I am Charles. And we will see you all next week. Same bat time, same bat station. Peace and God bless.